Yo, what's going on everyone? My name is Count Jinsula, and I hope you're having a really good day, and if you're not, then I'm just sending you as many positive vibes as I can. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about raid battles in Pokemon Go, and boy oh boy, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of you who are in need of some positive vibes because raiding has been an incredible mess for the past couple of weeks. Now the reason for that is because from a gameplay point of view, Niantic is implementing a couple of changes to raid battles in order to, I guess, improve the system or create new dynamic gameplay. But yeah, these changes were throwing a lot of players for a loop. There's just so many people who are reporting that certain Pokemon are no longer relevant. And then of course, when it comes to some of these raid bosses, they're having a very hard time taking them down, even though these raids are something that a lot of players are familiar with. But I really do think that this speaks to a lot of different issues with Pokemon Go that have been ongoing, more in particular with the communication side. But I do think that when it comes to these raid changes, I'm pretty much against it. Like, raiding has been the exact same thing for the past several years, and the only difference is, of course, there have been more Pokemon that have been released over those years. And because of that, raid battles have essentially become very easy. There's not many legendary raid bosses that players have difficulty taking down. It really just comes down to the numbers. There's plenty of raid bosses that do require more than 2 or 3 trainers, and that's really the only hurdle, and Niantic has done very little to help out players get those numbers, and if anything, they're fighting against it, because of course last year we had the nerf to remote raid passes, and that was a huge hit to the raiding scene. There were so many players who were finally able to do legendary raids, but now it's going to be more difficult because it's incredibly expensive and it's very limited how many remote raids you can do. So getting that help from people in your friends list is a lot more difficult nowadays, and I think because of that, Niantic is not necessarily in tune with how players actually play their game. And this is even more apparent with these raid changes because, my goodness, I just am very confused here. Like, I don't understand the purpose behind why Niantic is implementing these changes now, out of all time. Like, there was plenty of opportunities in the past for them to do these sort of changes and for them to drip feed these changes, but for them to do a whole bunch of changes, just completely redo raiding, it's creating a lot of chaos. It's creating a huge stir within the Pokemon Go community. I mean, there's just a lot of chatter online regarding raid battles and how some players are not able to take down Kyogre and Groudon when earlier on they were easily able to do so. And it's mainly because of how charge attacks work and how dodging works now, and it's just creating such a huge mess. And I really do think that at the end of the day, Niantic should have communicated a lot better. If they had intentions to make these sort of back-end changes to raiding, then at least they should have had some build-up to it. They should have given players a bit of a heads up so that they could be prepared for it. But instead, they just dropped it on all of us without saying a word. And a lot of players were suspecting that some of these changes were issues, they were glitches, they were bugs. But Niantic responded to that and said, oh no, these are just some things that we're trying out because we want to change up raid battles. And because of that, players had to make very huge adjustments to how they play Pokemon Go. And in general, that ended up causing a lot of chaos. And we're all still feeling that right now. There hasn't been much regarding raid battles that Niantic has communicated. And for us as Pokemon Go players who are just trying to go out and casually raid, farm up candies for both Kyogre and Groudon, we're all having a very difficult time, and Niantic is the only people who are at fault for this. Now, the one big issue with these raid changes that I really want to draw attention to is the fact that, well, the entire meta for what is considered the best Pokemon of each type has completely shifted. Like, most recently it was reported that now Shadow Exegdrill is much better than Shadow Metagross when it comes to raids. And it's very confusing because for several years Metagross has been the absolute best steel type that you could bring, but now it's no longer relevant, and it's mainly because of how charge attacks work. Because of the timing issues with raid battles, like how you use your charge attacks is completely different now. I feel like there's so many players who are just used to having certain Pokemon in their raids, and now they cannot use those Pokemon, or at least they're not going to be as effective. And that is a huge problem because so many raid battles are now incredibly difficult, and you need to do as much damage as you possibly can. Yeah, this is just very hectic. This is just all very confusing, and I really feel like the timing is also not good because Niantic just implemented Dynamax Pokemon and Max battles into Pokemon Go, and a lot of the hype around that is kind of getting overshadowed by a lot of these raid changes. And there's so many players who live in like rural areas and players who live in low population areas, or people who just simply do not belong in a community, who are having such a difficult time taking down these raids now because Niantic made it incredibly difficult for them. Like, you can't even just Zerg it down anymore with a raid party of about 5 or 6 players. They have to reconsider what Pokemon they bring, and yeah, it just feels very clunky and it just doesn't feel very streamlined. At least with the old raiding system, it was very straightforward. You just furiously tap on the screen to build up energy, and then you dodge their charge attacks, and then you unleash your charge attacks, and you just try to maximize your damage. It was more of a stats game. Like, you really didn't even need to dodge. You just need to make sure you bring the best setup, like whether it be the best counters, a mix of shadow Pokemon with regular Pokemon, or, you know, the right Mega Evolutions, and the weather boosts and friendship bonuses. It was basically a stats game, and I thought that was fine. Like, raid battles are not meant to be difficult in my opinion. It's meant to reward players for their dedication, how much Pokemon they've powered up, how many players they can muster to take it down. I feel like that was the central focus of raid battles, but now it just seems like it's a completely convoluted mess. And it's very frustrating because so many of my Pokemon were considered the best counters for so many different types, and now I have to reinvest. I have to find the new Pokemon that are considered top, and I have to invest in those. I have to spend so much Stardust and candies to get those powered up, and I just feel very deflated by that because when it came to raiding, I had everything all set, and now I have to just completely start from scratch. But again, I have to say this, I don't necessarily think these changes are bad per se. I think at the very least they're breathing some new life into the raiding scene because players now have to actually strategize and plan around raids, but I do think that where Niantic messed up was they did not give us a heads up. They did not communicate this at all. It just came out of nowhere and it created so much chaos, and I think that is something that Niantic needs to avoid when it comes to Pokemon Go, because I mean, come on, it's been several years. I think we're approaching our 8th year of Pokemon Go, maybe even like our 9th. Wait, actually 2017 is when the game came out. Yeah, it's about 7 years now. Like, we're past 7 years and they still haven't figured this out. I don't understand why it's so difficult to communicate with players regarding little things like this. I mean, it goes such a long way, and I totally understand that when it comes to Pokemon Go, they have the unique thing where they also have to get approval from Nintendo and Gamefreak probably and the Pokémon Company, and because of that, maybe there's a lot of communication that is not even allowed. I mean, I can't say whether or not that is true, but it's just something that I'm suspecting because, you know, I've worked in the Asian office culture. I tend to understand how Asian companies tend to work. The Pokemon Company and Nintendo, they're Japanese companies, so I'm assuming they're going to go a little bit more old school when it comes to that. They probably do not want to show how the food is made in the kitchen. So at the same time, I still feel like this is just hurting the Pokemon Go community. I mean, if they're planning to make big changes like this and the player base is not aware of it coming, then yeah, it's gonna feel like a train wreck. And that's basically how I feel right now, and a whole bunch of people I play with feel when it comes to raiding. And yeah, this is unfortunate, and hopefully Niantic will address this really soon. Maybe they will create a blog post, or maybe they'll have some sort of in-game announcement or out-of-game announcement talking about a lot of these changes, because there's just so much confusion right now. There's just so much, I don't know, turmoil within the Pokemon Go community. People are just not understanding how the new raid mechanics work. They do not have the right Pokemon in their raid party because they're using the same Pokemon they've always been using. And yeah, it's just a big hot mess. And I'm really concerned for the future of raid battles in Pokemon Go. And that is a cause for concern because raiding is a core fundamental aspect of this game. So yeah, these are just some of the thoughts and opinions that I've had regarding raiding, and I just really hope there is some positive changes. I really hope Niantic is paying attention to the community and they come up with something to make it up to us, because yeah, this really cannot continue. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding raid battles down below. Is there anything in particular that is frustrating you right now? Definitely share what that is, and yeah, let's have a great discussion. And yeah, with all that said, that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.
Jinsula